Okay, here's some more challenges with the evidence. Is it correct? So, is the evidence as presented correct? That means reading the statements. And I mean the statements of the defendant's statements, any statements made by the other side. In the case in the UK, what you will get from the police side of things is now something called the streamlined forensic report, or an SFR. And frequently those are extremely sketchy, is absolute minimum details, quite often, not always, but quite often. They're not even an expert report. It's just a piece of paper that says we've got X. We found X number of, I don't know, nasty photographs on this device. It might not even tell you where. It probably won't tell you where on the device, i.e. within the operating system, those things were found. So you've got absolutely nothing to go on, no idea whether what the defendant thinks they did or said they did correlates with the artifacts on that come off the hard drive. Now that last bit, WWD, that's me being a bit naughty there. That's my letters for what will Windows do. It's rather unfair because all operating systems and software programs have their foibles. The point is, does the examiner know which particular foibles the version of the software that was in use at the time of an alleged action occurred has? So do you know what foibles that bit of software has? And that particular version of the software, what's it do? Do you know what it does? Do you know whether they've moved the cheese since the last version update of that particular software? And it's very hard to keep up with all of that, but it can be very, very significant that certain artifacts that in one situation on one operating system, for instance, may mean that a defendant has actually viewed photographs in another version of the operating system doesn't prove that at all. It just shows that the operating system knew that those photographs were there, and that's rather important. Bear in mind also that the outputs that you will be looking at are quite often machine reports. So the reports created by software, and they might not capture everything, and they can have errors, as we can see. In this example here, which is from a case where there was a concern that an adult male might present a danger to children in the same household. Now, part of the evidence revolved around some alleged indecent images that had been found on a particular device that had been taken into custody by the police. Now, as is common in these kinds of cases, a skin tone recognition software had been used to find potential indecent images, and it had done its job. But the problem was, if you can see this little table here, those top two artifacts there in that table, these were the outtakes that were actually in the streamlined forensic report that came from the police. And these were outtakes that were located in the WhatsApp message database. As those of you familiar with that WhatsApp will see that that's the case. That area is, of course, inaccessible by a device user. These pictures, incidentally, were absolutely incy-wincy, titchy-weeny. They each only consisted of about 1,754 bytes of data. Nevertheless, I was able to blow them up enough to see that the first one in that table there was actually a picture of somebody putting face paint on a child, but that's all they were doing. They're putting face paint. So obviously the skin tone recognition had picked up the face. But the point of the matter is, it wasn't an indecent photograph. The second one too was not an indecent photograph. It's actually a picture of a white sofa. So that did not go terribly well in court when I was able to stand in the witness box and say, I'm afraid that at least two of these are false positives, because of course it throws into doubt how good that evidence is. It throws the rest of the evidence seriously into doubt. Let's have a look at some other stuff with evidence. Interpretation. Now, this has come from a real case. I hope I've obscured the nasties enough for people not to be able to read what it was all about, except that it's fairly obvious it was about pornography. But this was produced in evidence, and it was produced with great certainty in the other side's report that this was evidence of the defendant searching on this device for illegal and or indecent images. Now, as you would expect, there was some pretty choice vocabulary in those URLs. But more to the point, look at the source. If you look at that closely, you can see that this activity is synced data. It's synchronized. It didn't happen on that handheld device at all. It had come in from another unknown device that may or may not have belonged to the defendant. And even if it did, whose hands were on the keyboard at the time? The data shown here, incidentally, yes, it came off a mobile phone that the person was carrying when they were arrested. So again, I was able to show that, actually this wasn't what the prosecutor thought it was, just because they thought that's what was on the tin, wasn't what was inside the tin. And that's commonly the case. I'm not knocking police analysts here. A lot of the time, the officer in charge of the case, who isn't a trained forensic examiner, has to look at it, and they, without any training, have to say what they think's been going on. So the chances of things being incorrect are actually pretty major. So that's why it's a good idea to really, really look at what's being presented. Now, that's a criminal case. In another case, just by comparison, a corporate case this time, a legal team had presented a vast spreadsheet of data items that it was alleged were documents. It was intellectual property that a disaffected employee had downloaded from the company's server to a home laptop. The particulars of claim alleged that more than 180,000 documents had been exfiltrated. That's what the particulars of claim. That's what they'd gone to court with. This is all before calling in me as an expert. And I looked at the spreadsheet, and when I looked at it very closely, you could see that it represented outputs from a well-known AI-based cybersecurity platform. And although you could see that there was more than 180,000 unique events that had been flagged by the system on the day in question, only 35,000 odd data points referred to unique file names. And a fraction of those were actually documents. And anyway, looking at it closer, at the end of the day, it transpired that there was no exfiltration of sensitive data as such. A quantity of company IP had been accessed by the home worker, and this has had the effect of triggering the cybersecurity platform. However, the knee-jerk reaction had been to send that worker home on gardening leave, as they euphemistically call it, and they were bringing in the big guns, and they were going to take that to court. And that was all because the outputs were not really understood by the people looking at them.